we'd like you to come. If you're not on the fan page, please come and become a fan, because that way it becomes simple to get the information to everyone. We have this meetup every third week of the month, usually on a Wednesday. It's been mostly here. Today we're going to have Bebo folks, but before we get started, I'm going to have, I would love to thank the AOL Developers Network and Naveed Anwar, who is so we have today Steve Cohen as well, who's the head of platform development from Bebo. He's going to be coming up. Is Steve here? Awesome. There's Steve. So without further ado, I will bring up Blake, and I don't think anybody needs to be introduced to Blake Conchier, who's responsible for all these werewolves and vampires and stuff that we have on Facebook. So before anything else, here you go.
Hi, how's everyone doing tonight? Let's see if I can switch over to or is this my presentation? Alright. And apparently I chose Firefox. Okay, so real quickly, I just thought I'd let everyone know I was asked to speak to the subject of porting Facebook applications to the Bebo platform. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet. I wrote just a quick summary article, and the folks at Bebo and AOL have been kind enough to publish it and make it available to everyone. And I thought I would just jump into it. I'm going to assume that the audience I have here today, everyone has at least taken one Facebook application live, and I'll still try and keep the if not. I'll still try and keep everything relevant and quick. I think there's several important decisions that you need to make as you make this decision to port. First of all, I've certainly encountered, I think, a very odd element, sentiment amongst some Facebook developers, in that they don't necessarily see an enormous value in porting to Bebo because of any string of criticisms that they may have, I can speak to some of that very quickly. A common, I guess, criticism may be that some people have claimed that Bebo is not as viral as Facebook, that the viral channels aren't as insanely quick and that sort of thing. And in my personal experience, in dealing with Facebook and Bebo, my applications did spread quicker on Facebook, but really and truly, I don't really think anyone would consider 1 million users in 2 months a failure. So, I mean, Bebo is an enormous audience, primarily UK. None of this is news to anyone here, and I mean, from a monetization perspective, the UK audience monetizes really well. They might as well be an American audience. They do have slightly different tastes. Your feedback will be kind of cute and British. It's kind of cool. No, it's a hoot, because you see all these British words and your support requests, and it's just it's a little colloquial and a little bit amusing. But I mean, really and truly, I don't think anyone should complain about a network that is phenomenally large and has such a low barrier in terms of porting over. The Bebo team spent a lot of time making everything as similar to Facebook as they could, so it's not that much work. When I started, I remember the day I started porting. It was about midnight. I finished at 9 a.m. And I was done. So from the perspective of how much work is it, how hard is it, and that sort of thing, it's worth a day. All right, one guy, one day work. I can't imagine why in the world you would turn away from that opportunity. So then, in terms of actually getting to it and what's going to be involved in making the port, there's two very large decisions that you're going to make. The first one being whether or not you allow cross-platform functionality. And I'm going to assume everyone in the room is an engineer and has been guilty of solving a very sexy and useless problem at least once. And cross-platform functionality is one of those types of problems in most instances. So, I mean, by that, I can tell you, as an engineer, it would be really cool if someone could take, one of my games and their profile, from Facebook and use that same, the same number of points, the same character and that sort of thing on Bebo. And probably less than 2 to 3% of my users would ever use that. Just so you know, everyone in this room probably, just show of hands. You have a Facebook account, raise your hand. I'm going to assume everyone. How many people have a Bebo account? Okay. How many people use both of them with some frequency? Okay. Even like in a group, that's working on this and spending all this time, not as many people use both social networks with any frequency, and that becomes even more true when there's no when it's not your job to do that. So the average user out there is on one social network. They may have up to 3 accounts, but they only spend any of their time on one. So the average user may have a MySpace account and a Facebook account. They're only spending their time on one of those 2 social networks. So providing them functionality that behaves across both of the networks is probably a waste of your development time, and it could be a significant amount of development time, especially if you're trying to do something really sexy like, okay, I'm going to map the friend lists between these 2 sets of IDs on these 2 different networks. This becomes a non-trivial problem. The more you go down this path and spend a lot of your time on it. If you're not building any real business value, just cut it loose. Just create a completely separate experience, separate database, and there will be some very vocal, very small number of users that complain. Who cares? Why in the world would you spend 50, 60% of your development time creating this experience that less than 1%, maybe 2% of your users are ever going to use? I mean, that's just not worth your time. Unless you have, I can't imagine if anyone in this room has too much in terms of development resources. You've got a bunch of developers that are bored, have nothing better to do. If so, can I have them? Because that's just insane. So there are situations where it may make sense to create an experience that does integrate across the different networks, and that's usually synchronous Flash experiences, things like poker games. It's not much work to have, okay, here's John from Bebo and here's Fred from Facebook, and they're interacting, they're playing a poker game together. That's great. If you want to port your character from Bebo to Facebook, then you're going to have to present the user with a screen that does something like log in to your Facebook account from within the Bebo experience, or vice versa. From a support perspective, that's a nightmare. Far more users are going to be confused by that than will actually use it. And you'd be amazed by how many users would probably just turn their nose up and say, well, I use Bebo. I don't have a Facebook account, so I can't use your app. All right? So be very, very careful if you get tempted to solve that sexy engineering problem, because odds are very good you're not adding any business value whatsoever to your company or yourself or whatever, whomever you're developing this for, and you may end up regretting that. The next larger decision that you're going to have to make is whether or not you're going to reuse your code base. And now, anyone done open social porting? Have you ported to open social? Yes? Okay, so you've done both. There's significant differences in those platforms, and you're going to find that porting from the Facebook platform to the open social, probably at 50% of your code, if that, can be reused. With going from Facebook to Bebo, there's no reason 99% can't be reused. All right, these guys have spent a lot of time, they've done a great job, and you're going to find that if you branch your code base just to make it easy, and just do those 1 or 2 function calls different, you're just going to be a little bit offended and a little bit disgusted with yourself as an engineer, because how messy is it that you just took this enormous code base, made a complete copy, and then made 10 changes? It's just kind of. Oh, yeah, is that a question?
So when you talk about code base, is your comment based on a specific language of choice, or are you talking about
It shouldn't matter, actually. If just so you guys know, I use PHP, but there's no reason you couldn't. Whether you're using Java or whatever else, there's absolutely no reason you couldn't reuse your code. It really is that similar. So you may have seen SNML format tags. They're similar to the FBML. What everyone may not be aware of is that FBML is fully supported by Bebo, so you don't even have to switch to that. So you may have had the impression like, okay, all of my view code, everything that I'm presenting to the actual browser, I may have to change. That's not true. You can reuse all your FBML, which is an enormous time saver. I think that probably, is everyone familiar with model view controller architecture? Very common architecture if you're not using it. Chances are you don't even realize it actually, just because it's such an easy way to organize your applications. In this situation, you're going to probably make just a few changes in the view area and a few changes in your controller logic, and that's going to be it. First and foremost, I'm going to assume that everyone's going to reuse their same code base, and it's going to be pretty and lovely, and you're going to love it. First thing you want to do is make sure you're using 64-bit integers. I know Facebook a long time ago told everyone, hey, we're switching to 64-bit IDs. If you're not using them in your Facebook app, you're probably going to want to switch over to doing so. You'll find a few bugs if you don't do that, because Bebo does use 64-bit integers for the user IDs, and you'll, I'm trying to remember what it is. If you're seeing some odd bugs where users aren't lining up like you expect to, do a search on maxint, the 32-bit maxint value in your database, and you may find like, oh, all right, all my users are being created with that value. You have a problem to solve. So don't be surprised if you don't have to spend just a little bit of time there, because Facebook, while they've technically told everyone, hey, we're using 64-bit user IDs, I don't know if they've actually started doing it yet for users. I think just like Pages and some of their other functionality has that. The next big thing that you're going to have to do is I would recommend, in some capacity, whether it be a global variable, a class constant, something like that, you want to define and allow yourself to be able to switch off of Bebo and Facebook. You'll see right here, I've got a very ridiculously easy PHP example that just lets you switch off the fbsig_network variable. So just like Facebook, Bebo is passing you all of the fbsig variables that you expect, and they have one extra one, which is fbsig_network. If it's Bebo, you're on the Bebo network. If it's Facebook, you're on the Facebook network. And you can use that just as a switch in the very few places of your code that you do have to change. It makes it very easy to do the port. The next step that I followed was to merge the Facebook and Bebo APIs. It's really not that much work if you start looking through the APIs. Some people are intimidated by tinkering with Facebook's sanctioned client API and all that sort of fun stuff. You'll find it's not going to take you very much time. You're just going to have to switch in a few places. Things like, okay, what's the name of the server that I'm communicating with? I think it's it's like api.facebook.com versus something like apps.bebo.com. All right, so there's very few changes you're going to have to make to merge those two libraries. If I ever get approval on it, I've got all this these merged APIs that are available, and I'm happy to open source them, make them available to everyone, so that no one has to spend time merging the client APIs. It's not very much time, but I mean, hell, might as well save you half an hour, right? So yeah, I'm kind of just still waiting on hearing back from the Facebook team that they don't mind if I just throw that out and make it available to the dev community. But if you start spending a little bit of time on it, you will realize this is a very trivial step. And even if Blake never gets a chance to open source that, it wouldn't have saved too much time. Then there's a few things that you do have to handle. A few API calls that aren't supported yet by you. Oh yeah.
You added, users has app permission, get apps, and set properties.
Are those, you guys have those now?
Yeah, we have those now.
Okay, see, look, even like in the short time since I've put this up, the Bebo team's already like whittling away at the few changes that you have to make. So if you could, yeah, just drop me a note and I'll have this document updated. By the way, this document is available on the AOL developer network, so hop online, check it out. I think, is it available on Bebo's site as well? Okay, yeah. So it's available on Bebo's site as well, and we'll just make a few more updates just to pull some things out. There are very few API calls that are not yet supported by Bebo, and they're really fast about cranking them out to make sure that there's even fewer of these. Chances are you're not even using some of these. I doubt anyone is even using the data storage stuff in Facebook? Anyone? Yeah. So, no, I'm not ripping on the data storage stuff. For whatever reason, the documentation just isn't there yet. So I don't think it's very evident to the Facebook community yet that that's available to you. But you don't need a database, which is wild. But no one's really making use of that yet. It's really cool. So there are a few, so I've got listed here a few API calls that aren't supported, a few FBML cases that aren't supported yet, and then there's a few things that Bebo does support that Facebook doesn't yet. Bebo's a little bit more of a music-friendly social network, so there's a few things like bands and playlists and band songs and things like that that are supported by Bebo. Again, that's in their documentation, so you can. Of course you can port, mindlessly your same application over, but it's worth spending your time to understand Bebo as a network and the things that are available, because chances are you may even have a few ideas that work far, far better on Bebo than on Facebook. And then last but not least, FBJS is not yet supported by Bebo. It's in the works, it's coming any day. But yeah, so if you extensively use FBJS, you are going to have to spend a little bit of time, making sure you accommodate the user experience there. But again, chances are not too many applications that I've seen are heavy on using FBJS, so it's not going to be too much time for you to, say, okay, well, all right, instead of this little sexy pop-up, like, okay, it's a next page, like link navigation. So. Let me think. And then I've got a link here that just represents a few of the other things that are supported on Facebook that aren't on Bebo. And these are non-standard things, like they've got links that are very specific for, okay, if you're creating a link that's like, hey, send a message to user ID number 123. There are specific links that Facebook makes available to you. Those do exist on Bebo as well. It's just, I don't think you'd be surprised if it's a different URL. There are a few minor changes like that you may have to look out for, just to make sure you keep yourself honest and that you don't accidentally send a Bebo user to Facebook. That does confuse the hell out of your users because they're expecting some functionality in something that they're doing on Bebo, and all of a sudden they find themselves on Facebook and they're like, what the heck is this about? So you might want to abstract those out. And I think, really and truly, and then after that, there's nothing to stop you from taking it live. The process is extremely similar. You're going to have the same configuration opportunities that you have on Facebook. All the same, like a callback URL. All of those concepts translate and exist just as they do on Facebook. So from that perspective, you're looking at the exact same model and the exact same type of work. And that's it. Really and truly, it took me very, very little time to do this. And given that you could all port your apps by tomorrow morning, I'm going to expect everyone in this room to be done, just like I was in that time frame. It's incredibly low-hanging fruit. I can't think of a single reason that you can't devote one day to supporting a new network. I assume some of you have also, earlier I spoke to it, some of you have ported to Open Social. It's way, way more work, and a lot more frustrating, a very different way of thinking about creating an application on a platform. So if you have time to do that, you absolutely have time to port to Bebo, so you should do so. Yes?
Are the viral channels exactly the same symmetrical ones on Bebo as well, like requests and notifications,
absolutely.
And profiles, and
yeah, so you're gonna see the same things. Now, obviously, the user experience is slightly different. The UI on Bebo is different. You'll find, if you're not familiar with Bebo as a network, the concepts have different names, but they are analogous. So newsfeed on Facebook is analogous to the changes list on Bebo. There's comments instead of a wall. But these are concepts you're familiar with and you've used in the past. So really and truly, you're going to feel like everything is what you've seen before and what you've worked with before and what you've done. So it's really, really a very low education curve. So with that, I figured I'd just open it up. I wanted to keep it, brief, to the point. I'm going to open it up to questions if anyone has any specific questions. I'm happy to speak more to the technical side of things. I'm happy to speak more to, if you guys are interested in understanding a little bit more about the Bebo users, just anything you guys wanted to know, I'm happy to answer.
What was the size of your application, which took the night to port?
All of them.
Okay.
So my applications use a common code base. It's a code base that was scanned and is reusable. So
what was the size of your code base, basically?
I don't know how many lines of code I have at this point. If I had to guess, probably 30 to 40,000 lines of code. And I think the port required me to add 100. You know, really and truly, like what took the most time was simply you know, locating and finding these differences. You know, there's very few at the time. And then, you know, doing things like, you know, looking through the client libraries and finding like, oh, okay, here's where, you know, a server's pointing to Facebook servers. I have to make sure, like, when I'm on Facebook's network, I'm pointing there, and when I'm on Bebo's network, I'm pointing to Bebo's servers. Things like that. And then, you know, there are some differences in terms of, like, layout size is slightly different. So if you're doing a lot of, if you have a lot of CSS that's absolute, you're gonna find things look a little bit odd, and so you want to spend a little bit of time, you know, prettying it up. But again, you know, those are so minor. I mean, there's no reason you couldn't even take your application live and then make it slightly prettier later, right? You'd be like, oh, well, I've got an extra 50 pixels. I should, you know, make use of this space. Yes.
So your experience currently now, in just looking at where Open Social is going, and the fact that it was so easy to port a Facebook application to a Bebo, is there a possibility that maybe just a development migration to supporting the FBML structure versus messing with Open Social?
You mean, is it possible for Open Social to support that?
Well, I'm saying that for people not to be messing with Open Social and just to focus on FBML. And since Bebo, what about if other social sites start supporting the same thing that Bebo did?
Yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. I would absolutely love it if MySpace and, you know, High Five and God Bless Orchid, you know, was to, you know, start supporting FBML too. I'm gonna put my money on Orchid not doing that, just to
throw it out there.
I don't know. Yeah, I got a feeling that you know that's not gonna happen anytime soon. So while that's great, I don't know. I kind of feel like for that to happen, what needed to occur is I think Facebook, if they open source their platform just a little bit sooner, you know, these other social networks wouldn't have taken the time to develop and support, you know, Open Social. I mean, the reality of it is, if you're going to ignore a network as large as MySpace or High Five or Tag, we're missing out. And I mean, nobody in this room like has the authority to kind of like say, hey, you know, I'm this big, swinging, important developer, so you should support FBML. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that for you. You know, I mean, you know, even if every single one of those networks did a completely different platform, you know, everyone would probably spend some time trying to support it, or, you know, or make the business decision, does it make sense to, you know, do this port too. I think we're going to probably have two standards for a while, just because I don't know what the value is for Tagged or for High Five or anyone else to say, hey, we're going to support, you know, FBML or, you know, the Facebook platform functionality just as we supported Open Social.
But they'll get all those applications.
A lot of them are being ported anyway.
Yeah, they're doing.
And you know, and what you're seeing is even for those people that don't have time to port to Open Social, you know, some classy person has copied their idea and is running with it on this other network. So, so they're getting the applications anyway.
Sure.
It may not be the same people, which is shitty, but it happens.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Dave Nielsen, and I think, by the way, very practical presentation. And
Well, thank you. I hope it wasn't too boring. I tried to be short to the point, so I can spice it up later.
I can tell you, Steve and I are definitely paying attention. So, anyway, we're working on a project that is for the 5% that does need sort of like the cross-platform database shared issue, stuff like that, and definitely is, you know, for unique applications that do need to share that kind of data. It's called the Open Face Framework probably haven't heard of it because we haven't really marketed it yet.
Okay, no problem.
Anyway, the point is that I'm curious from the perspective, we haven't supported Bebo yet.
Okay.
And we're here because we want to learn about that. There are different types of things that are different. You know, not only different APIs that maybe have implemented, but also things like policies. And I didn't hear you mention anything about that. I was wondering, did you run into any situation where you could do something like maybe the number of invites or something like that on Facebook or Bebo, but not vice versa?
Right. One of the changes that did kind of slap me is that the gameplay that I created was designed around the assumption of a 10 invitations per day, which is at the time that's what Facebook was permitting when I created my games. Then they bumped it to 20, and now they bumped it to whatever the hell they feel like on a given day. So I have no insight into the algorithm that Facebook uses to determine how many invitations you have. My understanding is it is based on user feedback. Bebo is still fixed at 20. I mean, really and truly, what everyone, a lot of people like to focus on, okay, you know, what's the number of invites and does that matter? The only reason it mattered for me is just that I designed the gameplay in such a way that with 10 invitations, you could achieve a certain number of points and the user was rewarded with, oh, now you're on level 2. So that was, for me, I think a relatively unique problem. I don't know that it will affect most people. I think if you're worried about, like, what does this mean to the virality of my applications, really and truly what a lot of people focus on is, okay, what are the number of invitations I can send out? And that is only half the problem. What I would focus on is the conversion, because sending out 100 invitations and only having a 1% uptake is absolutely no different than sending out 10 invitations and having a 10% uptake, except for one very important difference, which is there aren't 99 people that just ignored you. And so you may end up with the same sort of growth, but without burning through a network of people that aren't interested in what you're doing. So I know I'm telling you, do what I say and not what I did, which is focused on the conversion ratio, but it's a far more valuable in terms of like building a business and having retained, engaged users in the long term to focus on that part of the puzzle. For Bebo, like I said, 20. One place that I did find was kind of interesting is MySpace recently changed it such that you can't reward users for viral marketing. So that does change like the dynamics when you have a game that is very focused on that. So I mean, frankly, it's killed my growth on MySpace, and a lot of people are struggling to grow on MySpace as a result. But I think your growth is killed is not the end of the world, because all right, you're growing slow instead of insanely fast.
Just one quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Is that
And that was policy.
That's
Yeah.
policy, and that's
Yeah.
not technical, so they're not technically limiting you, but if they found out you were doing it, they might kick you off? Is that
Yeah, they suspend your app.
right?
It's wonderful. You use a nice big suspension notice that you don't discover until tons of users start mailing you. You're like, what do you mean it's broken? It's fine. And you look at it, you're like, oh no, I'm in maintenance mode. So you didn't even know that. From a policy perspective, I haven't seen any significant differences between Bebo and Facebook. I hope I'm not speaking ahead of myself on that. The same type of rules that you're seeing on Facebook, like advertisements are not allowed on profile pages, but they are allowed on a user's Canvas page and things like that. I haven't had any problems with that whatsoever. But policy-wise, it is absolutely worth looking at each one of the networks. Some people, historically, MySpace had a lot of rules but never enforced them. So this was prior to platform. If you were doing widget development on MySpace, it was absolutely against their terms of service, against the rules to prompt for a username and password and then automatically post to their bulletin board and things like that. Everyone did it, and no one ever got in any trouble, really. So something to keep in mind is, there's the terms of service and then the de facto, like, okay, what's actually enforced. I wouldn't play with fire personally, and find yourself, suspended or in any trouble. But all that really matters is, what are the rules that are enforced. Yeah.
Facebook keeps changing lot of rules, or the platform is a living thing. So once you have an app, you have to maintain it, like the new profile page.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how much work is involved, or what advice would you give for somebody who's doing cross-platform, so they're maintaining on both platforms?
Right. I think this is going to be the first time with the profile change that Facebook's making, where you have a very, very significant change in terms of like policy, design, functionality, that sort of thing. Historically, a lot of the changes Facebook has made has been centered on cracking down on abuse, which is absolutely not a bad thing. What that does is that really just kind of takes the noise out for you. So I mean, if you're developing a genuinely interesting application that users enjoy, you're not going to have to worry that much about, okay, Facebook has new rules about what's allowed in the newsfeed, because chances are you weren't abusing it. If you were abusing it, then okay, maybe it does suck a little bit to be you, but you have to I guess historically, like the more sneaky you were, the more work it was. And if you're basing your business on okay, how can I simply try and circumvent, skirt, and push the limits on and abuse a given platform, you're gonna constantly be brainstorming on that. And I think that's not nearly as valuable as focusing on just how do I improve my product, because that's gonna get you usage, whereas abuse will only take you so far. It's going to be very, like I said, I think the most interesting one is these upcoming profile changes that Facebook's going to make, and I don't have a good beat on how much work that is going to be. From a maintaining perspective, yeah, there's always going to be, you're adding a little bit more complexity every time you add a platform. You may find, you'll find differences. Like a given platform may start experiencing a problem, right? I mean, Facebook and Bebo are not going to have the same bugs, right? So you may find, oh, this is odd because it's broken on Facebook, but it works fine in Bebo. And you'll have to report about it on Facebook or work around it, depending on how responsive everyone's going to be. So I wouldn't, in my experience, it hasn't been that bad, but I think this is the first time where we're going to deal with a significant difference in what we've experienced. Yes?
I'm really impressed on how closely aligned the Facebook and Bebo environments are. And they seem to be converging more and more and more. At least the Bebo team seems to be adding more functionality, which is great. Yeah. I'm wondering if the Bebo team will start creating functionality that Facebook doesn't have, or if Facebook will create functionality that Bebo doesn't have. I'm wondering if it's going to converge or grow apart.
I'm not the guy to answer that. That's right. So yeah, I'm happy to hand over the mic. I'm gonna speak to what I believe to be their strategy, and you can please hop in and correct me. My understanding is that. And historically this has been absolutely true. It's been what they said. The Bebo team is very committed to making sure they support Facebook functionality 100%. And they, some of them are here. You guys should definitely meet them and thank them for working their asses off to do that. They've, some of the things that they've added support for, like I was speaking to earlier, like the music-related stuff, like bands and playlists and that sort of thing. That's an artifact of the fact that. These networks are not identical. You're going to be dealing with, slightly different products and a slightly different user base. And so you may find, some applications, are more successful on Bebo than on Facebook and vice versa. But thus far these guys have been committed to, building a platform that requires. Their intent was to make it so that they could just basically. Take a Facebook application, port it quickly, and it runs. I would be surprised if that changed. I don't think that's in the plan to just say, hey, now that we got these, we're gonna all these app developers, now we're gonna change it all up and mess with your day. That would be odd. Yes.
But a more specific question: this Facebook profile change is a very significant change to the API. So, are you gonna support new Facebook API? Are you gonna stay with old Facebook?
That's a great question. I don't know that one actually.
What is it?
It's up in the air, but honestly, the reaction we've been getting from our developer community has been pretty negative with respect to Facebook's changes. I feel that it really kind of makes your users not your users anymore in many cases. So we really have to evaluate whether we're going to limit your session keys and not let you interact with the users when you want to do that. I think that we can probably still maintain pretty good compatibility while still giving you would know, like, okay, these are Bebo users, they're my users. I can query their data whenever I want to do it and just sort of make the decision that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very
Yeah.
fundamental shift.
There
Let's
are also
bring
there are
Steve.
major changes. I mean.
Steve Cohen,
Yeah.
please come on.
Hi, I'm Steve Cohen. I'm the head of platform engineering at Bebo. So, yeah, Facebook's really thrown a monkey wrench in the whole compatibility thing, frankly. And we're actually we talked to them on occasion. They're actually really happy when we announced the platform. And the primary goal for Bebo is compatibility. If we're not compatible with Facebook, no one's going to develop for our platform. So we really are trying to make it easy on you guys. And we also have to do what kind of makes sense. So this is a new area, and we've never really experienced them sort of making such a 90-degree shift in how they approach things. So it's sort of a weasel answer, I guess, to say that I don't know yet.
I think the reality of it is that, I mean, this is a major decision. We're not sure how it's going to affect Facebook as a business and as a platform. If it turns out to be a really stupid idea, I don't think Bebo's going to copy it. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
That's absolutely right.
And I can be a little bit meaner because I don't have to be diplomatic about it. Like, if that's a terrible direction and Facebook's shooting itself in the foot, I mean, you'd be retarded to do that. So
Can we ask, like, show of hands, how many people think the new profile is a good idea versus a bad idea?
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do so.
We're not changing our profiles. That's just not going to happen. We are a profile surfing site. That's one of the things that is different about Bebo. People just go from profile to profile to profile because they're interesting. On Facebook, my profile is completely uninteresting. It's just, here's my picture, here's all the stuff that you've seen a million times before and you don't care about. You interact with Facebook in a completely different way. Users on Bebo customize the profile. That's where they spend most of their time. So we're not going to change that. But can I see a show of hands who likes the API changes that they've proposed? No, seriously, raise it. Okay, so
From
there's...
a user point of view or a developer point of view?
From developers, you guys are all developers, right?
No, just in case you don't know, nobody in here is a Facebook user in the traditional sense. There's 115 million or whatever that they're claiming now. I guarantee you don't use Facebook the way the vast majority of them do. I don't. I mean, I'm on Facebook way too much of my day. I mean, I'm not using it to chat with my friends, interact with them. It's work. And for most everyone in here, it's work in some capacity. Right. So you're not spending 4 hours a day hanging out on a social network to interact with your friends. That's your job.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to point out is Bebo doesn't have the same problem set that Facebook has. We sort of learned from a bunch of Facebook's early mistakes and didn't repeat them. So that's why you sort of hear like, oh, Barrel is really bad in Bebo, but it's not true. I mean, you can grow, but we gave our users more controls. In fact, controls that Facebook, after we made them, has incorporated into their system. So we're not really solving the same problems, I guess you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the networks are not identical. I mean, one of the things that is important is, as mentioned, it's a profile surfing network. Your Bebo user is a little bit more interested in self-expression than in communication, and that's the network that's been built. So as you think about the applications that you're creating, self-expression applications do better. So in terms of things like here's my my photo widget, my here's something that here's a pet, something I customize, all these mechanisms of self-expression, they do better on Bebo, and it's not because Facebook doesn't support the functionality necessary to create that. It's just that the user behavior on Facebook and the expectations they have are slightly different. They're interested in, hey, how do I meet, chat with people, communicate, and not and they're not as focused on like, okay, how do I spend an hour, getting as much Johnny Depp on my profile as possible? Which is, in case you're wondering, like the amount of Johnny Depps per square inch is phenomenal. It's just, it's going up year by year.
That's the DPI.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So now you know what that stands for. But yeah, I mean, that's not part of the Facebook experience, and you can do that on Bebo. And so, and again, keep that in mind as you're developing for this network. MySpace is another network that's like that. So your applications that are focused on communication don't spread as quickly on MySpace as the ones that are focused on self-expression. And that's the user experience. So, I mean, none of these social networks are identical. LinkedIn, I mean, would be wildly different. And I don't think that surprises anyone. LinkedIn is definitely more different than these other networks in terms of like if you put a little spectrum or did the Venn diagram of how these users or these networks are similar, LinkedIn is going to be way over there. What that means for LinkedIn is you can do some very different applications on that platform when I don't think it's open yet, right? But, yeah, no one knows. But yeah, I mean, when your average user makes 140 grand a year, you get a very different set of possibilities. Yes, in the back.
What can you say about templatized feeds for Bebo?
So I don't know currently how much support is there.
Needs a little work.
Okay. Yeah. I've been like a little bit frustrated with actually Facebook support on that because I don't have insight into how well that's working sometimes. And my personal experience has been that it's really, really, really smart some days, and other days it doesn't do like I was hoping, and I'm like, oh, my feed is ugly. I would love to have, unfortunately the feed is kind of a very valuable part of these networks, and having as much insight in there it would probably result in more abuse. So yeah, it's a delicate balance for these networks, but yeah, like conceptually it's a great idea. I just wish I had insight. Anything else I can speak to? Oh yes,
yeah.
Sorry.
It's a question for both of you. You mentioned about your users versus Facebook user ID. So I mean, I don't think there's much cross-platform thing. We're seeing fragmentation of the social networks, right? So some of your users are coming from MySpace, some from Bebo, some from Facebook. I'm addressing like if you're doing a useful app, like for a small group or a family-friendly app. So now you have a heavy database, lots of information in the database, right? So you have a user ID, but they come in. So you're really using Facebook and Bebo for these. And I think this will increase because I think the bulk of the growth in MySpace was actually older people.
Well,
right?
I mean, I guess.
So some of the question I'm asking you mentioned something about Facebook tries to get in the way of you interacting with the users. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, like especially on the Canvas page? In what ways have you seen Facebook trying to come between you and your users?
I mean, really, the first time we're seeing that is just with this upcoming, proposed set of changes where things like your session keys are going to expire. And so I get to experience a significant event or change on the Facebook platform where I feel like now I can't, interact with users the way I want to. So I get to experience it. I mean, the interesting thing is there are, two camps, two schools of thought at this moment, which is that there's a camp that claims, oh hey, all these changes are going to really interfere with that and change a lot of business models for people. And then there's of course another camp that says, hey, it's not going to matter. I don't know that yet.
Supposing what you say, Bebo user ID and Facebook user ID on the same page. So you're kind of looking at, let's say, a financial.
Right. So you're thinking. Well, I mean, for me, like in my experience, there is a very, very small section of users out there in the world that have both a Facebook account and a Bebo account, and they're active on both networks.
Actually, what I meant is like the moms on LinkedIn or Facebook, and the kid is on Bebo.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
they're just talking to each other.
Oh, right.
Right. So in that case, open ID, or how do you interact with that?
Right. My experience with that is, I mean, you're authenticated on both of the networks. All right, already. So when when you have a user on Facebook, you can with confidence know, hey, user 123 is who they claim they are, and the same on Bebo. What I personally would do is, I think those type of experiences really they lend themselves well to Flash clients and to giving the user a synchronous experience. I'm not as interested in trying to figure out how do I map user 123 to user 456 on a given network, but there's no reason to say that you couldn't present a user with hey, tell us who your friends on Bebo are and that sort of thing. But I would be very, very hesitant to present the user with a screen that did something. I mean, you want to automate that experience, of course. I would be very hesitant to give a user an experience where they're in one social network and I'm prompting them for credentials for another social network. It's just a very jarring experience. And I mean, your other options in that case are give me the user IDs of your friends on Facebook. It's a little bit tough to ask a user to prompt and enter all those sort of things. So I think in terms of creating a cross-platform experience, if you want that genuine experience, you want it to be sexy and automated and that sort of thing, we're very much so at the mercy of the relationships that these different companies create. So if Bebo and Facebook were to ever sit down and say, hey, here's the mapping between our user bases, and make that available to application developers, then you can pull that off.
I think I get your question. Like,
yeah.
you're interested if your mom is on network A and your kid's on network B. I actually have no idea how you figure that out.
No, then tell us. I mean, so
so the kid on network B would have to say, hey, my mom is on network A, and this is her profile on network A. But we don't have any of that data. So one of those two
people. You
people.
want to keep any data. I mean, all you know is you're providing us, this is a Bebo user number 23, and this is a Facebook user number 73. And we know, we map them, because suppose you're keeping a, like, things to do list or something to, useful.
So
and in that case, you don't want other people looking at that, right? So we say, okay, the mom's allowed to access. So they log in to our Canvas page, our Canvas page, and inside our iframe. So actually, Bebo and Facebook really have no clue what we do inside our Canvas page, right? So my point is that we're using them as authentication networks. We're not fighting the fight of register for our, website and stuff. It says, oh, just add your Facebook app, and now you can share information with a college-going daughter or something like that.
Right, but I guess
we're using them as authentication people.
What I think is going to be interesting for you is just creating those links and like wiring up that network in a way that hey, user 123 on Facebook, is okay with sharing their data with user number 456 on Bebo, and in terms of like wiring up that network, if you don't already have that data in terms of who's promoting what, you are presented with a situation of like, hey, I either have to prompt a given user to tell me, hey, what are the users you want to be to allow to share this data with and that sort of thing, or you have to present them with a screen that says, hey, if you're already friends with them on Facebook, sign in with those credentials, and then we can then with confidence, okay, I've created this mapping across these two networks. Either one of them I think is a little bit tough to do from a user perspective. Obviously, like, everyone in here is probably an engineer. That's not so intimidating and not so weird to us, because you're like, oh, that's cool and sexy, but your average user is easily intimidated.
Be careful. I don't want to make a long discussion, but I think it's really easy because, they log in for the first time, they have the app on Facebook, they have the app on Bebo, individually. Mm-hmm. They come to our Canvas page, there are two different networks, but once they come to the Canvas page, it's our PHP code, right?
Right, and you can absolutely, there's nothing to stop you from saying, hey, here's 10 users on Bebo and 10 users in Facebook. Within that environment, checkbox off, that sort of thing. I just think it's going to be interesting to kind of like present them with, how do I, how do you know? And because, one of the great things about, dealing with these social networks is, when you add one of my applications, I know who your friends are. I don't have to say, hey, here's, 27 million user IDs to pick from. Tell me which ones are your friends. That's really intimidating, right? So I think from a scalability perspective, like, yeah, you have access to all those users and you can present them all. But what's really cool is when you can say, hey, I know your 10 friends. Pick the ones you want to interact with, and it's just, really truly, it's just, like the user experience that you present and how do you make it as easy and as seamless as possible. You can absolutely do exactly what you're saying, and present them like, like here's 10 users on Facebook, here's 10 users on Bebo, tell me the ones you want to interact with. I think that as you get, larger and larger, you may find it becomes a little bit tougher to present the user with that seamless experience.
Maybe Bebo and Facebook actually need to talk and see if we can facilitate that process. But actually, we have very few cross-platform apps. We do have a couple notable ones. Actually, one of our more popular apps first launched on Bebo and had pretty good uptake, and then they actually have a Facebook thing. So you can sort of walk around in this thing and see Facebook users walking around. It's a virtual world. Interesting tidbit, it's our 5th most popular app, and it has never sent a request or a notification. So it's grown entirely virally through the profile.
What's the name of that?
It's Gaia Online.
Gaia?
Gaia.
Yeah. Profile discovery is more important in Bebo. You'll find that as a channel that's going to spread your application far more so than Facebook ever has.
Certain types of apps. One of the things Blake really mentioned was like there aren't a lot of Bebo users on Facebook. That's completely true. Dealing with the Bebo community, it is an insult to tell someone to go to Facebook. Like if that is literally, aside from the bizarre British swears that they come up with, going to Facebook is like, you're old, go to Facebook, is basically what someone posted on my profile. That was, if you go to my profile on Bebo, you'll see, oh my God, you're 31. What are you doing on Bebo? Go to Facebook, that's for old people.
So, yeah, it's a different environment, and I think one of the wonderful things on Bebo is that it sent me to Urban Dictionary a few times because I was like, I have no idea what this guy just called me. And, at first I thought I was, oh, I'm an old man, but no, it's a British slang, which made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, keep in mind, these users are there for different things. Facebook is not...
Winker is not an old man.
Oh, no, anyway.
No, also a little interesting tidbit. Do not call the head of platform on Bebo old, because he will ban your account.
Okay, I feel like we're kind of like pushing time.
Yeah, we're down to where we want to wrap up.
Okay. Should we take one more question then, if that's okay?
I have one question for Blake and one question for Bebo.
Okay.
Blake, do you have any plans of creating the same portfolio for MySpace?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do so. And put that together as well. Something that I've worked on and created that's, I don't know if it's interesting to the development community, but I actually created a framework where you can support Facebook and open social like networks using the same code base. It's a little bit of extra work. I had to like abstract out, if you guys are familiar with templating and partials, I abstracted out a lot of FBML-like functionality, and I recreated it in JavaScript on the front end because I just absolutely did not like the idea of making an API call with every page load to grab that same sort of data in terms of usernames and all that sort of information, so I cache it in the browser client. The problem with that is, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, this is an interesting engineering problem. I'm not 100% convinced it's useful. The problem with it is it's almost a port to use this new framework. If you like, for example, if you're using, it's as much work if you're not using a templating technology, like if you're not using Smarty and PHP, and then all of a sudden you're basically presented with, oh, now I have to structure everything in a slightly different way to support output in a coherent way. So I've got that. I have that available. I've considered open sourcing it. But I kind of was hesitant because I thought a lot of the development community would be like, well, that's not useful to me if I already have an app. It's only useful if I'm starting from scratch. But I'm happy to make this tutorial for MySpace. It's a little bit longer. And by a little bit, I mean a lot.
Step 1, rewrite all your code.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys, like I said, if you're doing MVC architecture, you're going to find that the only reusable portion, for the most part, is your models. So if you're prescribed to a thin client, fat model architecture, you'll find less work is involved. But you can't fundamentally get away from the fact that open social is different. Yeah, I'm sorry. Significant.
My question to Bebo is, are there any plans of providing more stats on apps, such as daily active users?
That's actually what we've been focused on for the last month. So yes, that's in the works, and we're sort of looking at them internally to see if they are accurate and make sense. We're new ground for providing stats, and we've never done it before, so we want to make sure we get it right, and it's nearing fruition. So really, it's just a matter of adding it to the developer app, and well, first making sure that the stats are accurate, and then adding it to the developer app. So we're going to have something pretty soon.
So we have a schedule to follow, and people will be around. You can ask these questions later, one-on-one, but right now we need to move on to the demo. So if you have
absolutely.
any
Thanks for
thoughts.
letting us do your time, and I apologize for running a little bit late. But yeah, I'm going to be here, afterwards. Come harass me. You can tell me if you have a question or if it sucked or if it's good. It's okay to say it's good too.
You can file this.